Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rebecca, and this is Crafting and Crime Daily, and I am currently recapping the trial of Robert Tellis. At the time of the alleged murder that he may or may not have committed, he was a public administrator in Clark County, Las Vegas, Nevada. So this is the state of Nevada that is trying Robert Tellis for the murder of Jeff German, a reporter who was writing some not so flattering articles about Robert Tellis. So on day 3, we're going to get some really, really interesting testimony. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back. Day 3. Now, I didn't think this trial could get more interesting, but it did. So I didn't expect the witnesses that we saw on this day. Let's just say that. Okay, so the state first calls the director of communications for Clark County. And this is a person that receives public records requests from reporters. When they get these requests, this gentleman says that they notify the people involved that they're need their assistance in gathering this material. And he received a request from Robert German. He was very familiar with Robert German. We get requests from him all the time. So they got this request that they want Robert German's emails, Microsoft Teams, communications, and personal emails between Robert Tellis and Roberta, the woman he was having an affair with. Although that never came out in front of the jury. Never discussed in front of the jury. But from January 1st of 2023 2022 until the present, that was the time frame for the emails and communications that Jeff German wanted from Robert Tellis. So this request was sent out to Robert Tellis on August 8th. This witness had no recollection of Robert Tellis ever trying to stop this records request. No. And that was it. That was his testimony. So Roberta was the next person to take a stand. Yeah, the woman he was having an affair with. She takes a stand. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. No mention of the affair. None. The jury doesn't know. Yeah. So I don't know if there was a 48 hours show about this whole thing, and it centered around these 3 women in the public administrator's office that were complaining about how he was running the office. And one of the women was so upset about it that she almost committed suicide. And it was very dramatic. And to the point where these 3 women, they had gone to human resources and were told there's nothing we can do about him because he's an elected official. So they decided they're going to follow him, and they kept following him and Roberta to a shopping center parking lot where they would both drive their separate vehicles, get out of their vehicles, get into one of the vehicles, into the back seat. And yeah, what that has to do with Jeff Gerben's murder, I don't know, which is probably why we're not hearing about any of that during this trial. At least not yet. So Roberta takes a stand. Nice looking woman, younger than him, obviously. She said she was an estate coordinator. That was her function at the public administrator's office. So she had a group of cases where she would handle the estates of the deceased. She said that the employees, after Robert took office, the employees were very divisive about him, very divisive, the whole office. Then she said that when the stories came out about Robert Tellis, Robert was very unhappy about these stories and that he hated Mr. German. That was her words, not mine. So that Friday morning, now Robert's already lost the election. Roberta's getting transferred to another division in the county. And she's going into her office that Friday morning, September 2nd, to do case summaries. She had to summarize each one of her cases for whoever was going to take over the cases. So this was her plan to do that day and to apply for some overtime so she could get that function done. She checks her email and she sees this records request for all of these communications, and she does a 180 and says, okay, I'm going to fly for overtime so I can get this records request done. And she had to put that aside. So on Monday morning, she learned via Twitter that Jeff German is dead.
The second page of the, the third page of the document. And it appears to be a text from you, right?
Yes.
And it's from 9/4/2022, and it looks like it's at a little after 7 a.m. And
Right.
you're saying, oh my goodness, Jeff Gehrman died.
Yep.
And it looks just from the punctuation like that was surprising to you.
Absolutely.
And I think you said that you sent screenshots of the
article.
This is on page 4. It looks like there's a communication on 9/4, same date, and it looks like you sent a screenshot to Mr. Tellis of like communication on social media. Is that fair?
Yep.
And the second message appears to be we have a bigger version of it, but a screenshot of the article.
Mhm.
Is that yes?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
I can't see it, so.
Yeah, I actually have a
This is
bigger
similar.
version. I'm
Okay.
one step behind you. So does that look like a readable version of the screenshot of what you saw on social media about Mr. Gehrman's death?
Sure.
And then,
Yeah, that's what I thought I sent. Yes.
okay, so those were sent to Mr. Tellis,
Correct.
and his response, this is on page 5 of the document. It's kind of focusing. His response to you is "holy shit,"
Yes.
and you actually respond,
It's all over
"It's
Twitter.
all over Twitter."
Correct.
So then do you communicate with him your concern about going into work?
Yes.
And so I think if I'm understanding you, you opt not to go into work that day?
Absolutely not. Correct. I stay home.
Okay. I want to move on. This is page 34 of the documents, and it looks like, are you able to read that up there from you? Yeah, I'll read it. Let me zoom in a little. So this is a communication, it looks like from you to Mr. Tellis on
Okay.
9/6/2022.
Okay.
And it looks like you write, have you received a response from Jeff or the DA? Just wondering.
Okay.
Do you know what that's in regard to?
I do not remember. I'm just looking at that. I don't.
Okay. Do you think it was in regard to the records,
Um,
or do you not remember?
I don't even remember what Jeff I'm talking about on there, or the DA. Probably our DA for Clark County.
Okay,
But yeah, I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't remember a lot.
that's okay. But I mean, fair to say that's what that text says.
Sure. Yeah.
And the only DA, I mean, like the DA that you would have been interacting with would be like the DA civil who was-
For
for
public
those-
administrators. Correct.
Okay, dealing with those messages.
Right.
Okay. And then this is page 36. And it is from 9/6/22. And you send a message, Rob, WTF,
Yeah.
please do not be driving your Yukon around for a while.
Correct.
What had you seen that made you send that message to him?
I think what everyone else saw that Yukon in the photos
You mean
or
the
in media.
media messages that
Right.
Metro sent out
Right.
of a car associated with Mr. Gehrman's murder?
Correct.
And had you known Mr. Tellis to have a similar Yukon?
He had driven it to work a few times. I believe it's his wife's vehicle.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you're kind of like, whoa, don't drive your car around
Yeah.
for a while.
Yes.
And then his response is, that's crazy.
Okay.
Is that
Yes.
fair?
Yep.
And it looks like, this is page 37. You say,
Yeah.
please tell me your Yukon is not that color.
Correct.
You wrote that.
Correct.
And this is page 38. He says, it is similar if not the same.
Correct.
And you ask him another detail. Do you have racks on yours too? Meaning the,
Right. From the photos. Right.
okay. And this is page 39. What do you say?
Please tell me you don't.
Okay. And then,
I'm freaking out, Rob.
and are you starting to get nervous?
Yeah. I'm starting to suspect.
Okay. And then this is page 40. He says, yeah, I think so. It's fine. I didn't do it.
Right.
And then you ask another question about his tires.
Right. You don't have special rims, do you?
Okay. And then this is page 41, tell him I am, and then,
Very worried. Correct.
And you then say, what?
I say, it's not you, but they could try to use the vehicle as a way to suspect you.
And then his response is, my car has all matching wheel patterns.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then this is page 43. You seem kind of bewildered. You say, I don't understand.
Correct.
And then you say,
Your rims look like the photo.
and this is page 44. He answers you, I think they are saying that the front does not match the back.
Correct.
And then you say,
If your car is identical.
okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of communicate with him back and forth, fair to say, based on what you saw
Right.
from the Metro release of the vehicle.
That's correct.
And those were contained in these text messages that we discussed.
Yes.
Do you know what Trillion is?
Yes.
What is that?
For me, it was just an instant messaging app.
Okay, like Snapchat or something like that?
Correct.
Did you install that ever on your phone?
I had.
And who asked you to install it on your phone? Or
Rob?
Rob Tellis?
Mhm.
Is that yes? Sorry?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you installed it?
Yes.
Did you two communicate through Trillion?
We had. Yes.
Court's indulgence. Thank you, ma'am. I'll pass the witness.
And then she was asked about an app called Trillion. I've never heard of this app, but she did admit that she and Robert were communicating via this app. She did say that Robert had some concerns in the office, and their concern was that two of the estate coordinators weren't getting the overtime that they wanted to get, that they got before, and they were upset about that. But their concern was that there was buyers out there grabbing properties, and we're going to learn more about that later. So she said she did watch the video. I don't know when she watched it, but she watched the video, and she said, I am not very observant of people's gait. She said, to me, I did not recognize that as being Mr. Tellis. Okay, so that was her testimony. So then we have the first officer that arrives on the scene of the murder of Jeff Gurman. And it's at this point that we learn that there was quite a bit of blood on the scene. Because when the call comes through, it's called as a medical call. He thinks he's responding to someone who needs medical assistance. It wasn't called in as a murder or someone's dead. So when he arrives on the scene, he sees all this blood and he realizes it's a death. So then the next person was a police sergeant. He talked about there being a 31-page log of people that entered the crime scene that day. 31 pages? That's a lot of people. Detective Jaffe was not on the log. Then the next person on the stand is none other than Detective Jaffe. Now I'm picturing like a crime guy, like a mafia guy, this, I don't know what I had in my head. I didn't picture this white bread, football. He looked like he played football in high school, like just this clean cut white guy that didn't have an axe to grind with anybody. So he testified some really interesting testimony. So he's been in the criminal intelligence unit for 6 years. They do they're called the Public Corruption Squad, and they investigate politicians, police, anybody who's possibly corrupt. So he met Robert in March. He had a phone call with him first where Robert briefly details some allegations that he has against this company called Compass Realty. So then they meet in person, and Robert Tellis tells him about this Compass Realty. And there were 3 concerns that he had about this company. So apparently what happens is when someone dies, if there's no heirs and no will, the house will just sit there. And then the bills will start piling up. Water bills, electric bills, all these bills will start piling up. And then all of a sudden there'll be liens on the home. So these real estate companies will watch the court files for these liens. And once they see the liens, then they will file a motion to become an independent administrator. So these realty companies are doing the same thing that the public administrator's office is doing, but they're doing it independently. So they grab the property, and then they take possession of the property as a administrator. Then they file false documents with the court about the value of that property. Then they fix it up and sell it. And some of the times Compass Realty was selling to their own employees. And then they would resell it, and everybody would make money. So this was the allegations against Compass Realty. Now, Detective Jaffe said he took this very, very seriously, these allegations. So one of the things you have to understand in here is that when they take possession of these homes, one of the requirements in the law is that you have to notify someone, the next of kin. There's no one to notify. I don't know who they're notifying, but you have to notify someone. And there's no requirement that it be by certified mail. So you don't have to prove that you notified them. You can just say, hey, I notified them. So during this 6-month time that he and Robert are communicating quite frequently about the investigation of the Compass Realty. And when the articles came out, Jeff German articles came out about Robert Tellis, they communicated about that. And he said that the defendant was very, very upset. So June comes, Robert loses the election. Then it's August. Detective Jaffe's still conducting his investigation of Compass Realty. He's got to get bank records and interviews and all this stuff. Now Robert loses the election to a woman named Roberta Reed, who is one of those 3 women I mentioned that was not happy back in the, and that was following him. And anyway, Rita Reed. And so Detective Jaffe is contacted after the election by Rita Reed, who's now taken over as public administrator. And she says, hey, you need to investigate Robert Tellis. He was taking kickbacks. So then Detective Jaffe is approached by former Lieutenant Kim McMahon, who's now retired. She had been retired for about a year when she approached him, working as a realtor. And she alleged that Robert Tellis approached her and said, I'll send you homes if you give me 30% of your commission. Now, realtors usually get 7, 6, 7, 8% of whatever the value of the sale is. And he wanted 30% of that. And in exchange, he would give her more homes. So at this point now, Detective Jaffe has to open a second investigation. So now he says he was continuing his investigation against Compass Realty, but he was starting this investigation against Robert Tellis, setting up surveillance, monitoring his cell phone, tracking his cell phone. So what he found when he looked at Robert Tellis is that before Robert took office, there was a particular realtor who didn't get many homes. And he said there were multiple real estate offices that they were dealing with. But once Robert took office, there was one particular realtor who was getting a lot of houses. And then when Robert left office, this realtor was not getting houses anymore. So this is kind of where he was focusing his investigation. Now, he was asked on September 2nd, why weren't you surveilling Robert Tellis, or were you? And he said, no, we were not. Why not? Because on September 1st, they had surveilled him. He says, we don't do surveillance every single day because then people will start to recognize our vehicles. And so we do it sporadically. They like to space out their surveillance. So no surveillance on the date of the murder. And then September 7th, the day that they bring Robert in to interview him, someone in the police department, I guess, was aware that Detective Jaffe had been communicating with Robert Tellis on his investigation and says, can you come sit in on this interview? I think that's so strange. Why? Anyway, so he goes and he sits in on the interview. He claimed, he said, at no time was he ever present at the murder scene, the crime scene, never there. But after they interview Robert Tellis, they take his clothes, they put him in a white jumpsuit, they send him home. While they're processing the DNA and executing search warrants of his house, later that day, they get the DNA results and they go out to the house, and Robert is barricading himself in the house. So they call this Detective Jaffe to come out to Robert's home for two reasons. One, because he has a prior rapport with the defendant, and two, because he is a member of the crisis negotiation team. He says he's been a member for 6 years. He knows how to talk to these people that are not thinking clearly, that are threatening to kill themselves. And he said he called Robert's wife's phone, got a hold of him in the house, and spent the next 2 hours in his car on the phone with Robert, trying to talk him off the ledge. Except he wasn't on the ledge. He was in a bathtub on the second floor of the residence. So he said Robert was not thinking clearly and was wanting to harm himself. And then at some point later in the conversation was saying that he would come out, but he's stuck in the bathtub. So after they get him out, and we're going to talk about how that happened, he approached the ambulance and went in to talk to Robert. And he was asked, well, why did you do that? And he goes, well, as the crisis negotiator, we always like to debrief with our subject to find out if there's something we could have done better. That's weird. The guy's bleeding out on a stretcher and you're asking him if there's something you could have done better. Like, can you evaluate my performance? What? Okay, I'm just saying that's weird. And to see if he's okay, because he cared about the guy. He knew him. Anyway, so after all this drama, both investigations are still continuing. The one against Robert, the one against Compass Realty. So both of these investigations were concluded in February of 2023. Now, the Robert Tellis investigation was sent over to the FBI to see if they could confirm what they had found, what Detective Jaffe had found during his investigation, and that was that there was no evidence to support that Robert Tellis had gotten any kickbacks. So apparently the FBI conducted their investigation, came to the same conclusion. No evidence to support. And therefore, Robert Tellis's investigation was never given to the district attorney because he was exonerated. So, but Compass Realty, now that's a different story. So he went to the district attorney with a request and some evidence so they could get some more search warrants for Compass Realty. And they were told by the district attorney's office, you can't go any further with this because the law has a lot of loopholes in it. There's no requirement that the certified mail be used. So there's no requirement that you have evidence that you notified anybody. So we really can't do anything with this. So he was asked to shut this investigation down. So that's it. Then he was asked about the cell phone because he was tracking his cell phone. What was the cell phone doing the morning of September 2nd, the morning of the murder? He said for 5 or 6 hours, there were only incoming calls, no outgoing calls. And it was in the area of Robert Tellis's residence. That's it. Yeah. All right. Then there was one more person on the stand, and this was a SWAT officer. Good looking. Oh my God, this guy. Oh. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, good looking. He came in and he's in his SWAT outfit, you know. So he was saying that they were called out because Robert had been deemed a barricaded person. So after he was interviewed and they had a chance to search his house, run the DNA, they send him back home, they get the DNA results, then they decide they're going to go over and arrest him. He's not coming out of his house. So this guy responds, SWAT team responds with like 20 officers. 20 officers. They surround the home. They've got a sniper watching. A sniper? Really? I'm sorry. Okay. These guys take their job very, very seriously. Okay. They used a sniper. They used a robot, which he said they would send the robot to different rooms in the house, and there was clutter, so the robot couldn't get through, and so that didn't work very well. So then they send in a drone inside the house, and the drone actually goes up to the second floor into the bathroom, and there's Robert. And what you could see on the drone is that Robert had dropped a knife outside of the bathtub onto the floor, and there was a lot of blood. So they go in and they take Robert into custody. And there was quite a bit of blood, but he was attended to by a physician and 2 EMTs that were part of the tactical medical team that also responded. This neighborhood must have been crawling with police. Oh my God, the drama. If I was a neighbor, man, I would have gotten out my Doritos and some soda pop and be like, popcorn. Hey, there's a sniper on my roof aimed at his house. What? Yeah. Anyway, so that's how they got him into custody. So that is the show for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the recap. I'm still behind. Today they are doing day 5 testimony. This will be day 5 today. So I'm a day behind. Anyway, you got plenty of time to catch up. So, because this is not a case that's going to be ended anytime soon. I do want to tell you, though, the Detective Jaffe was not released from his subpoena. It sounds like the defense wants to recall him at some point, probably during their case in chief, because the cross-examination was very, very brief, like almost no questions. So he said, I don't have any further questions, subject to recall. So he's going to be back on the stand. So the drama will continue. Yeah. Anyway, have a great day, everybody. It's Tuesday, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.